Welcome to In Real Time, where we as Heights Church are inviting you in for real conversations about leading people, organizations, and change in the new normal. We're hoping that our real discussions about our church's journey will help you as you reimagine and rebuild yours. Well, hello, Craig Sweeney here with episode 3 of In Real Time. This is where we're having real conversations about leading people, organizations, and change. And I am joined by 2 co-hosts here of my amazing team here. Love these 2 people. Why don't y'all introduce yourselves?
My name's Cheryl, and I'm an associate pastor here at Heights Church.
Right. Yep.
And my name's Tim, also associate pastor. I oversee the online campus and also a teaching pastor.
Very, very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we are going to have a really great conversation today. We're going to share good, bad, and ugly, but truthfully, this one is a little more bad and ugly.
Yeah, this is it right here.
Yeah,
this is it.
So, what's the question here, Pastor Cheryl?
So it's part 2.
Okay,
I'm sorry, not Cheryl.
Yeah,
I'm Tim.
that's okay.
Go, Tim. You go for it.
You look very different than her, by the way, if you didn't know that. So,
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. This is really part 2 of a question that we've been asking. It's this idea is if we could do it again.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's the concept of Monday morning quarterbacking.
Oh, yeah, which we all love to do.
Yeah.
Because I love football. And I love second guessing.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, but we can't do it again.
No,
but I
can't.
really wish I could do it again. The whole pandemic. But I do want to learn because history has a way of repeating itself.
It does.
And I know that we can all say, and I've said, "Oh, we'll never close again." But here's what I have to remember: we weren't closed the 2 weeks before we actually did close in the pandemic the first time. But we did have half our congregation opt out of coming.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So even though we were open, half the people said, we're not going.
Right.
Yeah, we don't
We're not
trust
coming.
it.
Yeah, we love you, but we're not going to show up.
That's right.
And so it still meant massive change for us.
It did.
And so we had to figure it out. Yeah. So today we want to talk about just what are those things specifically that we would not do again. What did we learn from this thing, and what would we like to do different? And boy, these are ugly. Honestly, as I think about them, there's stories, there's people, there's some pain involved in these. But hopefully, our story will help you and your contacts and be able to make some better decisions than what we did. So as we move forward. But anyway, so as we go here, there's a couple of here that we have. In fact, Pastor Cheryl, what's this first one? What would we do different?
We would be clear about how we will communicate as a church. That includes our weekend experiences, our emails, videos, letters, social media, all of that.
Yeah.
Like we had communication going on prior to
We
pandemic.
have all of those going on.
All those things were going on, but we didn't realize how we needed to incorporate them all together.
Yeah.
And more is better
Yes.
than less.
Yeah, I would say our strategy just did not, well, I mean, at that point in time, we didn't really have a strategy necessarily for each of these streams of communication.
Right.
But I think we figured it out, but way too late. And I realized that people were so fragmented and because of that, there were things that we were saying, but many people were not hearing it.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
remember getting calls or text messages literally at midnight, one at 1 in the morning, about why I wasn't posting on social media about things that they had just spent a couple of hours scouring our social media. How come you haven't posted about this or this? And I said, well, no, I didn't post it there. Why did I even reply at 1 in the morning?
That's the first question.
I know.
That would be something
What
to
are
do
you
different,
doing?
right?
Yeah, that would, that should make the list.
That should have made the list.
Okay, what would I do different? I wouldn't check
Don't
social
pick yes.
media. Don't answer texts or
Yeah,
emails.
Put your do not disturb on and be
Until
free.
you've had your coffee in the morning at
Exactly.
least.
I don't
Give
know
yourself
what that.
some space.
Yeah, not at one, not at one. Anyway, but I said, well, I did talk about this. I talked about it here, and they said, well, it's not here, and I don't listen to that. I'm like, oh my goodness, what? But I still didn't figure it out at that point.
Right.
It still took me months before I figured out we need to have a total strategy, and it does make sense. Because when you have a weekend service, there's a percentage of your people that are there, and typically it's about a third, maybe half, somewhere in that. And then you've got your email, which about, a third people open them and read them. And so only, 2/3 didn't. Right?
Yeah.
You have snail mail, which everybody gave up on years ago. And so we really weren't making use of that at all. And then obviously social media. In social media, well, many people are using it for a lot of different conversations, but I don't personally feel like and we don't personally feel, we as an organization don't feel like social media is the place for every conversation.
Right, exactly.
Right? Because there's some things that you just can't really communicate well in social media. Right. We need a longer form. So we decided we need to have a strategy, but we weren't. And I'd say we suffered for it.
Yeah.
And also I did put out a video or two that it did not hit well. It was wrong. I'm not saying it was anything wrong with what we were doing. It just, because it wasn't a part of an overall strategy, it just was haphazard. It made little sense. And honestly, I don't feel like it really met the need.
Wasn't effective.
No,
probably.
no.
Yeah.
I would do it different.
Yeah.
If I could do it again, for sure.
Well, I think immediately we were just trying to figure out how to stay in communication. So we were open to whatever we could use. But as we realized we needed a strategy and reinforcement in that strategy, that helped solidify what we actually were saying.
Yes. Yeah, and I think part of it too, and I think this is really important, and this goes back to something we were talking about in our last episode, is that we need to give ourselves permission to think differently. Right. There's a lot of people who are demanding that we have conversations in certain areas and places, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to say yes to that.
Right.
I have permission to say no. I'll have the conversation with you, but I'm going to do it here.
Right.
I'm not going to do it here. And we've chosen that with many of these political issues or moral issues on social media. We have a role there. We're not avoiding those topics. Nope. We just want to make sure we have a chance to say what we want to say, in a form and in a length that it can be truly communicated. Right.
I think too, also a part of the communication plan is communicating your communication plan. Like telling our people, hey, this is where we're going to talk about this. Here's what we're going to use social media for. It's for this, not this. But you can get here and see. I mean, just, we have our communication plan, but also letting people know. So when those people go, well, why haven't you talked about this? Well, we actually did.
Yeah. Right.
Which brings us into a conversation that we had early in June, right?
Right.
Talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah. So because we learned some lessons from this, and I didn't want to do it again, when we recognized this issue of Roe v. Wade was coming up, we realized that we do want to speak. We do have something to say, but I don't want to be reactive to it. And I want to speak to it ahead of time. Because we could see it coming ahead of time. Now, not everything can you, but we did. And we did speak to it, and we told people, if you want to know what our thinking and our heart is on this, then the weekend experience is where you're going to hear about it.
Yep.
If you're looking to understand our heart on this, don't go to social media, because we're not going to do it there.
That's right.
That's not a place where we feel is effective for this conversation. And therefore, that whole group that demands you have it there, well, at least they know where. If they really want to know what we think, they can get that information.
Yeah, and it made it easy as staff when dealing with different ministry leaders who are dealing with volunteers, who are dealing with people who are just attending, all the way down, the trickle-down effect. It was very helpful to be able to say, hey, we talked about it on a Sunday morning on this date. You can find that on demand on our website and hear all about it, where we can really take a deeper dive on what we feel God's heart is on the matter, and not some story on our Instagram or a quick post which can't adequately
Yeah.
You can't have that conversation there.
Right.
And so it was really, really helpful to have a place to send people.
Yeah. And often doing it on the social media just creates more questions than it answers.
Yep.
Well, and you get, many people agree, many people disagree, and then you have all of this going on, and that's not the statement you're wanting to make.
No.
Right. We're wanting to look at our biblical stance, God's heart on a matter.
That's right.
And that can't be communicated on social media.
No.
So not to the degree that some people need it.
That's right. Yeah. These one-liners, they're not helping.
They're not serving well.
Not necessarily. No. Usually not.
Yeah.
Well,
we
and here's
do
the
need
thing.
To speak to it,
if
which
somebody,
we have.
yeah, and if somebody else can figure out how to do this on social media effectively and communicate the heart of God, I applaud them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to tell you, I am too dense to know how to do that.
Yeah.
So until I can
thing.
figure it out, I just can't go there.
Right.
Yeah.
That's not where it's going to
with you.
happen.
I'm
Yeah.
with
I need more words.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need more words. So I would do that differently. And I appreciated you sharing that as a staff person because very often, from my perspective, I mean, I didn't even know this was a question. It's like I don't even know what I don't know.
Right.
But as a staff person, you're fielding questions
All the
from
time.
people that don't want to come
All
to
the
me
time.
and won't come to me.
That's right.
And so my lack of strategy and communication here puts you in a difficult place to defend now a position I haven't even talked about yet. That's a tough spot for a staff person to be in, yeah?
Yeah. Yes. Very,
Yeah.
very much so.
Yeah. So having a strategy.
Yeah. It's
that-
wonderful.
Let's
Yeah.
start with that.
We're all ears.
Yeah.
Let's start with
Tell us
that.
what you think.
Yeah. And you know what? I do appreciate that our staff, we have these conversations. You guys will say, hey, what do we think about this?
Yeah.
What do we want to message?
Right.
Right.
And we have gotten better at this because we did learn our lesson. We're not perfect at it, but being able to say, all right, here is the current issue, and here's what we definitely want to say. And I want you to be able to say this freely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
And that's why we're
important.
going over these things of the good or the bad and the ugly.
Right.
Yeah.
So you can learn from them.
Yeah.
We knew that we wanted to be out in front of this Roe v. Wade because there were other issues we didn't get out in front of.
That's right. Yeah.
And so
Correct. Yeah.
And it was painful.
It was
was
hard.
painful.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of people misunderstood us.
Yep.
And guess what? Most of those would never come and talk to me. They just walked.
Yeah.
And I never got a chance to talk to my friends
I know.
about what I really thought. They just made assumptions.
Yep.
Yeah. So not good. I'd do that different. All right. Number 2,
Yeah.
which is kind of similar but different.
It's a little bit different because, we were creating a strategy with the communication piece, but this actually comes to making decisions
Yeah. Making decisions
fast or slow.
Quicker. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
We tried slow.
I have a degree
Yeah.
in making decisions slow, apparently. I'm certificate.
Think that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't take us looking at each other real fast as
no.
something negative.
No,
We're not
right.
rolling our eyes.
All right. I think this is really important
It
for
is, yeah.
leaders to understand.
Yeah.
There is a different perspective on this for sure, that we need to hear each other in this 360 degree understanding of a topic.
Right.
From a senior lead, there's how I would look at a decision. And then there's a team lead or teams that staff that they're trying to understand, why did he make that decision, or why isn't he making that decision? What's going on with that decision? And so here's what I'm going to say about it. When we were, first, Cheryl, you were with me because you were the executive pastor at the time.
Right.
You were the executive pastor through most of the pandemic. You were right there by my side. You knew all this. And I like to say, you know where the bodies are buried. There seriously are no bodies. I just want to make that clear to everybody.
Statement, yeah.
But you do know all of what was coming at me. And I remember we would just sit and we're looking at each other going, I don't know what to do. What do you have any insight here?
Yes,
This is
yeah.
nuts. I can't believe I'm deciding this. And you were sharing just a couple minutes ago. Can you describe that first week and the 3 actual videos that we made?
Well, we had gotten instruction that we couldn't meet any longer in person. That was on a Wednesday, I think.
That's right.
So
and half our church had already opted out. They're not coming to church anyway, so we already knew.
The virus was,
spreading
quickly.
This was March.
And so on that Thursday, we had gathered a meeting of all of our leaders.
Oh, it was Wednesday.
Was it Wednesday?
It was Wednesday.
Okay.
Yes, Wednesday. The first meeting was Wednesday.
But then we had created a strategy.
Yes, we did.
For what we were going to do for the weekend.
Right.
And how we were going to go about it. I went home for lunch.
Yes.
And I came back after the lunch hour, and it had all shifted.
All changed.
We were doing something.
Yeah.
But that was because some other instruction had come down regarding something.
Yeah. And if I understand it, that wouldn't be the last time it changed.
Oh, no.
By the end of the week.
But that's how fast and how rapid
things
were hitting us that we didn't even know how to process.
Yes.
We were overwhelmed ourselves personally. We didn't even know how we felt about all of these things or our position on all of these things.
Yeah.
And yet we were expected to lead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember I made 3 different videos, one right after the first meeting on Wednesday. Then I made another one at the end of the day, which was different. And then I made another one on Thursday.
Yep.
Yeah. Saying what we were doing.
It was absolutely nuts. But what was crazy is it really never stopped. It was that way for a full year.
It was.
It was.
Constant
It was
change.
a full year. And I remember that the decisions that were coming to us had massive implications on budgets, staffing, whether we would keep staff, release staff, how our people felt about these things. And we already saw the dividing lines. People were, pitchforks were being, they were grabbing them, shovels and pitchforks.
Ready to go.
And it was crazy making. We couldn't sort it out. And we as a staff were not sure, which is why we were meeting to try to figure out what do we do. And it was really crazy. But that's why the decisions were slow. And I understand it was. I don't know how you can speed some of those things up.
Right.
But at some point you have to pick up the pace. And I would say making decisions quicker is something I would, if I could do it again, I would. Now, honestly, I'm not sure that I could have given the impact of the decisions we were making because they literally were affecting people's livelihoods. But I do think I walked too slowly, and and I know I hurt people because I did. And people were gracious for sure. And I would say that we lost people as a church because I was too slow to speak to things. That's why this whole thing is bad and it is ugly and it's not all good.
No.
Right.
And I get it. People are all there. We look back on it now and we say, oh, it was horrible. It was, but they still walked and we still suffered the loss. I'd like to think that I could have done it differently. So I would do it differently now. And I think one of those things we talked about already, the Roe v. Wade, the change is speak to things that are dividing us.
Right.
And when we know.
Right.
When we know. And I think that's important. So.
Yeah, I think it is important. And I think in the beginning of the pandemic, you didn't know all that was going to be a divider.
Yeah, that's true.
I think as culture and society as a whole, I don't feel like we've ever, like in my lifetime, that we've felt this divided.
Right. Agreed.
It was so many different pieces of life were causing a division.
It's true.
That you didn't know what you needed to speak to. Now we see kind of how the ebb and flow of that is. We know that we have become a cancel culture.
Yes.
We know that different things are going to be a dividing line in the sand.
Yeah.
And so that's why we know we need to speak to it, but we always need to speak to it from the heart of God.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
I think that's the impact that we want to make sure we are always coming from, that place.
Yeah.
What's his heart on this?
Yeah.
Not my opinion.
It's true.
That's right.
That's good. That's good. And the hard part about this was it was so difficult to discern the heart of God because the things we were talking about were, should we meet? Should we not meet? Should you wear a mask? Not wear a mask? All the crazy making that has happened. And it's not like I can go to a verse.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, actually, we eventually did start finding our verses.
Yeah.
We
So
did find the passages that did guide us,
Right.
that showed that our heart should be showing deference for the people around us. But even with that, you can land on either side of these things.
That's true.
But it did help us in guiding the conversations to say, look, I don't know which one's actually right or wrong, but here's what we're going to do. And I think that was one of those things where I had to come to and just say, look, Craig, this is not a moral decision anymore. Okay, you think it is. And I did. I kept thinking there's a right and a wrong.
Yeah.
And I realized many of these, they're not. There's what we're going to do. And we're making the best decision we know how. And then I hope people will understand it and follow.
Yeah.
That's not how everybody saw it.
Right. And that's okay.
It is what happened.
Yeah, it is okay. Yeah.
That's good. Well, it kind of leads us to the next one, which is find out which voices I need to listen to for what. So years ago, it occurred to me, Solomon had counselors. This guy's the wisest person in the world and he had counselors.
Yep.
I think that's probably why he was the wisest guy in the world, wisest person. One of the reasons. But what I realized was I don't have counselors for all these questions. So trying to find the right voices. Yeah. And Tim, I think you could probably speak to this. Did everybody have the same motives?
Right. No, they don't. I mean, everybody's all over the board. And so you've kind of like you have to pull yourself back a little bit and say, discernment is something that comes to mind. You have to really be able to discern, is this a voice I should be listening to? Because we had gotten into this crazy rhythm that all the voices that mattered were from social media or some large
That's a good point.
media conglomerate that we see on cable TV.
Yeah.
And so we defaulted to those, but then all of a sudden those lines were drawn within the first week.
Yeah.
And different points of views were being weaponized and it was absolute chaos.
Yeah.
And you could see it in the people. And we had to figure out really fast whose voice we're really going to listen to. And I remember at some point during the pandemic, we did a series called The One Voice because it was the Jesus path forward for us.
Yep.
And we wanted to figure out, let's listen to this voice first, the voice of God first.
Yep.
And then, but in the world, it took a while because people were revealing themselves, so to speak, through different platforms. And you had to go, okay, where's this person coming from? What's their motives? And those are really hard to figure out.
They are.
But like my dad would always say to me, time is either going to expose you or promote you. And so in time, those voices became more apparent.
Yes.
And it's crucial, even now that as we're kind of moving past the pandemic and it's something different. A lot of times what we do around here is who are you listening to? Who are you reading? Right? It's still important.
It's still important.
But it got real cloudy.
It did.
It did for
early
a bit.
on.
Yeah.
And eventually did, but it's so important.
So that series, do you know what's so interesting about that? The One Voice, I actually got pushback.
Really?
That the one voice was Jesus, that I kept saying it was Jesus. I would get pushback, say, well, no, we need to be listening to something, and they'd give me another voice. And I remember just thinking, you do know we're a church. You do know that we are the church, the followers of Jesus in this. And he had some things to say about this topic that I'm talking about right now.
Yeah.
It was absolute crazy, Megan.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and I just think about, man, all the different perspectives in regards to this. So for me as a senior lead, when I think about these voices, I know I was searching for those because I just desperately wanted to be able to get the clarity.
Yeah.
And that was a word that really has come out of, we talked about clarity before pandemic, but it's a word we've really clung to during the pandemic. What's clear, what's not clear. We asked the question even today in our staff meeting earlier, because clarity is something we can all work from.
Right.
But you can't assume everybody has it. And for a lot of the pandemic, we didn't have clarity, and so we were striving to get it. But I know for me as a senior lead, I was looking for those voices because I wasn't clear.
Yep.
I wasn't clear because I was being told these are moral issues if you wear a mask or don't.
Yeah.
if you get the vaccine or if you don't. If you vote for this person or that person in this way or that, so many different things, so many different things. And you look at it and you just go, oh my word. Okay. So I'm really fighting against a current here. And I need to understand, what I think about this. And anyway, it's just so hard to do it, but that's why you prep as much as you can before the battles, so that in the midst of it, you are better prepared. But nobody had the game plan by any means. No. So anyway, that was crazy. I do that differently. Find out which voices I need to listen to for what sooner. And by the way, that wasn't a lot of voices that I wound up settling on. It was a few wise voices who I knew had the heart of God in mind, who had the good of the church and the unity of the church in mind. That's what they wanted. That's what they were looking for. And they weren't looking for quick fixes. They were looking for strength over the long haul. And they were people who were grounded in the Word.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. So that was really, really good. That was really good. All right, we got one more on here. Things that we would do different. This is a big one.
Embracing sooner.
Yeah.
Yeah, embracing sooner. It's all right not to know.
Yeah, unpack that.
Unpack that for us.
Embrace what sooner?
Okay, see, I'm sensing a theme through these. It's all me. That's the theme.
Well, we followed well.
I honestly believed, because everybody assumed I did from day one. You know what to do.
Yeah.
And I didn't.
Right.
Okay, so there's a real insecurity piece here, obviously, because when everybody's telling you that you should know and you're supposed to know and you don't know, you're like, I'm going to be found out at some point because I don't know.
Yeah.
I have no idea what I think about this.
Yeah.
I don't even understand this thing.
Yeah.
Well, it was all coming so fast. It was changing daily, even multiple times during the day.
Right. Yeah.
How could you not know exactly what to do?
No.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm supposed to be an expert epidemiologist to make a decision on whether we should or shouldn't close.
Right.
And so, but I wish I would have, if I could do it again, which I'm trying to do now, I would embrace the fact that I just flat out don't know, and I need to let you know. I don't know, but I'm going to go figure it out. And I think that's the key. And I would, the idea, so I think it'd be really good to answer this question. I didn't ask you guys this, but I want you to answer. This could be dangerous.
Here we go.
How healthy is it for you to hear from your senior leader, I don't know, but I'm going to go get it figured out. We're going to figure it out together. Or I'm going to figure it out.
Here's the crazy thing about that. As pastors who lead people, who minister and mentor and counsel others, that's like one of the very first things we tell them. Hey, it's okay not to know the answer. So if you don't, just tell them right away, I don't know. I'll go find out. But yet when it comes to a senior leader, somehow you feel like that's not acceptable.
Yeah.
Right. But
it didn't feel acceptable.
Well, and here's the thing is it feeds these other things. You couldn't make decisions quicker, which was number 2.
Yeah.
Because you weren't embracing, you didn't know quick enough.
Yeah.
So it just
compounds.
Good,
Right. But we tell others, hey, but then again, you feel like you can't embrace that same idea because you're the senior leader. But and that's just church. You get put on a pedestal. You have all the answers. Yeah. They think, because they don't know your life behind the scene, that everything is perfect. Yeah. Like you've arrived.
Well, it is. Come on now.
I know.
Starting to hurt. No, I'm playing. No, you're exactly right.
But you know what I'm saying?
So
and so there's just this thing that we take on.
Yeah.
And so therefore, it's a hit. It's an insecurity.
Yeah.
But there's a level of humility that has to be embraced to be able to say, I just don't know. Yeah. But like all of us, I'm going to get super curious, super fast. Yeah. We're going to figure this out. And I feel like when you have been able to share, I don't know, I felt like I then can say, well, let's all do this together. We can help you. And you're not on an island. Yeah. You're not on an island. We're a team.
Right.
Yeah.
We can carry that
I
for
felt
you.
like that gave permission. I was never concerned when you didn't know what to do, because you always were going to go figure it out. It was never that I don't know what to do and we're just stuck here.
Right.
It was always, I knew that you were on your face before the Lord. I knew that you were strategizing, asking God for wisdom and for clarity. So I was never concerned about not knowing what to do in this moment.
Yeah.
I knew you would get clarity at some point. That never scared me at all.
Yeah.
I think if I didn't know that you were going to go and seek the right sources to figure it out, that could have been concerning.
Yeah.
But the other thing, I think I agree with Tim, it gave us permission to be on the team with you.
Well, that's good.
Rather than you feeling like you just had to give all the directive.
Yeah.
Collectively, we were on this journey that none of us were clear about.
Right. Yeah. So if there's a senior leader listening in right now and you're speaking to them as a staff person, what do they need to hear about this?
Well, I think the first thing is it's one, it's okay to say I don't know. Two, because we acknowledge that during this pandemic, and even during we know some things now, but we don't know what tomorrow and that next hill is going to bring.
Right.
That, no one is leading from experience. We're in this journey, and so
We're pioneers.
We're pioneers. Nobody is leading from experience, and so it's okay to say I don't know. And if you're in a position, I would say, we've worked for different people through our ministry careers. We've met those people who would never say that.
Right.
And I just think it's detrimental to the organization. You don't feel connected. You don't feel like a team. You don't feel like we're carrying this together. And so, and then you're just waiting for them to actually tell you what to do. But early on, it's okay. I don't know. All right.
Yeah.
And if you don't have those kind of relationships with your staff, you need to start developing those teams, that relationship with the staff.
Yeah.
Because that came first. None of this was possible if we weren't like totally committed to each other.
For sure.
In ministry and in life.
Yeah, that's good.
And I feel like because of how we operated as a staff before, it wasn't awkward to hear you say, I'm not quite sure what to do, because you had been authentic before. You allowed us permission to be real before. And so there's some connectivity, there's a connection that takes place in that. That we feel like we're in it together.
As an ownership, right?
There's an ownership, and it's not, we have permission to not have it all figured out, but we're on the journey of continuing to figure it out.
Yeah, it's good. It's interesting, even though that we had that kind of a open communication prior, and this is, I think, a lot of staff needs to hear from a senior perspective. You get into that moment, and even though instinctively it is about the team, because it was always about the team, there's something so incredibly weighty about that moment. It pushes hard against that idea.
Right.
And it's such a powerful current pushing you to say, but you're supposed to know. Don't let them know you don't know.
Right.
Because there's so much at stake. If they find out you don't know, they're going to lose confidence, because there's a lot at stake for their families. They want to know, are they going to have a job next month?
Right. Yeah. Big.
It's true.
It's a big
And that was on my mind week one.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And I never wanted people to have to be worrying about that. There was way too much to worry about. You and I had some of those conversations.
We did. Yeah.
And it because of that, it was extra pressure I put on myself. And it took me a while to carry that weight.
Right.
Yeah. And so it's good that staffs understand for senior leaders that they do feel that weight. And I know they do.
Yeah.
Because I've had those conversations with other senior leaders throughout COVID, throughout the pandemic, and that is exactly what we were talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And they didn't know how to talk to their teams. Many of them had not already created that openness. And I know how hard it was for me.
Right.
It was impossible for them.
We already had the openness, but it was still difficult.
Yeah. So I think that's something I would do differently. I would come to that understanding sooner.
Yeah.
And that would have helped everybody.
That's great.
Yeah.
That would have helped everybody. Okay, so as we're wrapping this one up, here's the challenge. What would you do different? That's what I'd like to ask other leaders. What would you do different? And I know that there's things that they would have on their list as they would look to the last 2.5 years, the pandemic. what would you do different? What would you add to your list? This is just our list, but what's your list? And if you've only thought about this by yourself, go grab some people.
Yeah.
They'll tell you.
It's always insightful.
If you give them permission, they'll tell you.
If you give them permission, yes.
Oh, I think that's important.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it? I mean, honestly, for the pastor or the leader who says, "Oh, I don't want to ask them that. That's that. I'm not. Ooh, that is news. I'm not sure I want to hear." What would be your encouragement to them? What would you do different?
Well, if you really consider them team,
that's good.
then you're going to be able to be real.
Yeah.
And you're going to invite them into the process.
Yeah.
If you're a leader that just leads and expects to have a staff, that's different than a team.
Yeah.
And so inviting them into the process, if you really realize the value of each person on your team, and that you as a senior lead can't do it all, then it's going to be easier to invite them into the process.
Yeah. No, that's really, really good.
Yeah. That was good. I got nothing left.
You know what? That's how it's been the whole time I've known her. She just says it. I'm like, yes, ma'am.
I was like, yep, that's it right there.
That's good. Oh, valuable leadership. Yeah. That's why Solomon had counselors. Yeah. He needed It's good.
We all do.
Well, I so appreciate the two of you joining me in this real conversation about leading people, organizations, and change.
Yep.
And we're really glad that you were able to join us as well. And we're so glad that we've been able to be a part for this episode. And we can't wait to see you next time.